The crystal towers of Zilara Prime sparkled in the light of twin suns. The towers were made of a special material that grew like plants, but was hard like stone. The Zilari people had built their cities this way for thousands of years. They loved beauty and peace more than anything else. Diza stood in the highest tower, looking out at her world through large windows. She was tall and thin, like all Zilari people. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly. Her people called her Senior Coordinator, which meant she helped make important decisions for their whole star system. But today, Diza was not looking at the beautiful view. She was scared. Very scared. "The reports are getting worse," said Vec, her assistant. He floated into the room on his small hover platform. The Zilari did not like to walk much. They found it too hard on their delicate bones. Diza turned away from the window. "Tell me," she said, though she did not want to hear it. Vec looked at his datapad. His hands shook a little. Colony 7 has gone completely silent. Colony 5 sent one last message before their communication stopped. They said enemy ships were landing. They said the invaders were killing everyone, even the children. Diza closed her large, dark eyes. The Kralix Empire had been attacking Zilari worlds for 3 months now. The Kralix were nothing like the peaceful Zilari. They were warriors who loved to fight and conquer. They were big and strong and covered in thick, dark skin like armor. The Zilari had tried to talk to them. That was what the Zilari always did when there was trouble. They were very good at talking and making peace. But the Kralix did not want to talk. They only wanted to take Zilari worlds and make the Zilari into slaves. "How many ships do we have left?" Diza asked. Vec looked sad. 43 ships, Senior Coordinator. But they are cargo ships and science vessels. They have basic shields, but no real weapons. The Kralix destroyed our patrol ships in the first attack. Diza felt hopeless. The Zilari had never needed weapons before. They solved problems by talking, not fighting. But talking did not work against the Kralix. "What about our allies?" she asked. "Have the Vorthan responded to our calls for help?" They sent a message saying they cannot spare any ships. They are dealing with their own problems. The Bandari Union said the same thing. They all say they are sorry, but they cannot fight the Kralix. Diza understood why. The other peaceful species were just as weak as the Zilari. None of them had real warships or soldiers. They had all lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. "Senior Coordinator," Vec said quietly, "the Council wants to know if we should surrender. Maybe the Kralix will let some of us live if we give up now." "No," Diza said quickly. "The reports from the captured worlds tell us what happens when the Kralix take over. They kill anyone who might cause trouble. They make the rest into slaves. That is not living." She walked to her desk and sat down. The desk was also made of crystal, like everything else in the city. "We need help from someone who can actually fight." "But who?" Vec floated closer. "There is one more thing we could try. The emergency protocol." Diza looked up at him. "The old war protocol? But that was made hundreds of years ago, during the last Great War. No one has used it since then." "I know, but it might be our only choice. The protocol lets us send an emergency message to every species in our galactic database. We ask any civilization that can fight to come and help us. But who would answer? All the species we know are peaceful like us. The few warrior races we know about are either too far away or they do not care about helping others." Vec was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe there are species we do not know about. Species not in our main files. The old database has records going back thousands of years. Some of those records might list worlds we have forgotten about." Diza thought about this. It was a small hope, but it was better than no hope at all. What would the message say? It would explain what is happening. It would ask for military help from any civilization capable of warfare. It would tell them that innocent people are dying and that we cannot defend ourselves. And you think someone will come? Vec's shoulders moved in what humans would call a shrug. I do not know. But what choice do we have? In 2 weeks, the Krolix fleet will reach our homeworld. Our 43 cargo ships will not stop them. Daisy stood up and walked back to the window. Below her, millions of Zilari went about their daily lives. They worked in crystal gardens, created beautiful art, and studied the stars. They did not know that in 2 weeks, they might all be dead or slaves. Do it, she said. Send the emergency protocol message to every species in the database. Send it on all frequencies. Maybe someone out there will hear us. Maybe someone will care enough to help. Vec nodded and started working on his datapad. I will prepare the message now. Should I include our star charts so they can find us? Yes, include everything they might need. Our location, our population, information about the Krolix. Make sure they know we are desperate. As Vec worked, Dizes looked out at her beautiful world one more time. The crystal towers caught the sunlight and made rainbow patterns in the air. This might be one of the last times she would see her world in peace. Somewhere in the database was an old entry for a small blue planet in something called the Sol System. The entry was short and simple. It said the world was inhabited by a primitive species that had not yet achieved faster than light travel. The entry was thousands of years old, and no one had updated it. What the entry did not say was that the blue planet was classified as a Class 12 death world. It did not say that the species living there were the most dangerous predators in known space. It did not say that contacting them was strictly forbidden. The message went out to every star in the database, including the one called Sol. And on the third planet of that system, something very dangerous was about to hear their call for help. Admiral Sarah Chun was drinking her morning coffee when the alert came through. She was sitting in her office at the United Nations Space Command headquarters, high above Earth's Pacific Ocean. Through her window, she could see the blue planet that had given birth to humanity spinning slowly below. The communication officer's voice came through her speaker. Admiral, we're receiving an unknown transmission on multiple frequencies. It appears to be alien in origin. Sarah put down her coffee cup. In her 30 years of service, she had never heard those words before. Humanity had been exploring space for almost 200 years, but they had never found another intelligent species. They had found many planets with life, but nothing that could talk back. Patch it through to my office, she said. A few seconds later, her wall screen came alive with strange symbols and sounds. The computer was already working to translate the message. Sarah had served in 3 different wars between human colonies, but this made her more nervous than any battle. The translation finished processing. A calm female voice began speaking in English. This is Senior Coordinator Thizes of the Zilari Coalition, broadcasting on all frequencies to any civilization capable of military action. We are under attack by a hostile force called the Krolix Empire. They are destroying our colonies and killing our people without mercy. We are a peaceful species with no military force capable of defending against this aggression. Our children are dying. Our worlds are burning. If anyone receives this message and has the power to help, please respond. We are located in the Kepler 442 system. Time is running out. Please, if you can hear this, help us. The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was being wiped out by another group of aliens. A peaceful people were being slaughtered, and they had sent out a desperate call for help to anyone who might listen. She pressed a button on her desk. Get me the Secretary General of the UN Priority 1. Also, Contact all fleet commanders and tell them to report to the briefing room in 1 hour. We have a situation. Within 30 minutes, Sarah was in a video conference with world leaders from across Earth. The Secretary General, Maria Santos, looked tired. She had been dealing with trade disputes between the Mars colonies all week. Admiral Chun, are you absolutely certain this message is genuine? Santos asked. Our analysis shows it's real, Sarah replied. The technology used to send it is more advanced than ours, but not by much. The translation software confirms the language is consistent throughout. This is not a hoax. But how is this possible? Asked the Prime Minister of the European Federation. We've been scanning space for centuries. How did we miss an entire galactic civilization? Sarah pulled up a star chart. The message came from the Kepler 442 system, about 1,200 light years away. Our deep space scanners have detected radio signals from that area before, but we assumed they were natural phenomena. We never imagined they were communications between different species. President Chun of the Asian Alliance leaned forward. Admiral, what exactly are they asking for? Military assistance? That could mean anything. Based on the message, they're facing extinction. The Kralix Empire is systematically destroying their colonies. The Zalari appear to be completely pacifistic with no military capability. They're asking for someone to fight for them. The room was quiet for a moment. Finally, Santos spoke. Admiral, what are your recommendations? Sarah had been thinking about this since the moment she heard the message. We have to help them. These Kralix are committing genocide against innocent people. If we ignore this, we're no better than those who stood by and watched atrocities in our own history. But we don't know anything about these aliens, objected the President of the African Union. What if this is some kind of trap? What if we're walking into something we don't understand? Then we go unprepared, Sarah said. I'm recommending we deploy the largest fleet in human history. Every available warship, every marine unit, every piece of military hardware we can get there in time. Santos looked concerned. Admiral, that would leave Earth and our colonies almost defenseless. Are you sure that's wise? Ma'am, with respect, if we let this happen, what does that say about humanity? We've spent 2 centuries building weapons and training soldiers to protect ourselves. But this is the first time we've encountered people who truly need protection and cannot protect themselves. The Defense Minister of the Australian Commonwealth spoke up. What about the logistics? How long would it take to get there? Sarah switched to a tactical display. Using our fastest ships and the new jump drive technology, we could have an advance force there in 6 weeks. The main fleet would arrive 2 weeks later. That's a long time, Santos said. These Zalari might not survive that long. Then we send a message back immediately, Sarah replied. We tell them help is coming and to hold on as long as possible. Sometimes hope is the most powerful weapon of all. President Chum looked skeptical. Admiral, you're talking about committing nearly our entire military to help aliens we've never met, in a conflict we don't understand, against enemies we know nothing about. This could be a disaster. Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Earth looked so peaceful from up here, but she knew that peace had been bought with blood, sacrifice, and the willingness of good people to fight against evil. Mr. President, members of the Council, she said, turning back to face the cameras. I've read every report from every war in human history. I know what happens when good people do nothing while innocents are slaughtered. We have the power to help. We have the technology to travel between stars. We have ships and weapons and soldiers trained to fight. She paused and looked directly at Santos. What we need to decide is this. Are we the kind of species that helps those who cannot help themselves? Or are we the kind that turns away when people are crying out in desperation? The room was silent for a long time. Finally, Santa spoke. "Admiral, you have authorization to mobilize the fleet. Every ship, every soldier, everything we've got. But I want regular reports. And if this goes bad, the blood is on all our heads." Sarah smiled for the first time since receiving the alien message. "Thank you, Madam Secretary General. I'll have ships moving within the hour." As the conference ended, Sarah was already planning the largest military operation in human history. 837 warships would make the journey to Kepler 442. 50,000 Marines, armed with the best weapons humanity could build. The flagship would be the Terra's Wrath, the largest and most powerful ship ever constructed by human hands. But first, she needed to send a message back to the desperate aliens who had called for help. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Nations Space Command, responding to the Zilari Coalition distress call. Help is coming. We are mobilizing our entire fleet to assist you. Hold the line. Earth stands with you." Message ends. As the signal raced across space toward the Kepler 442 system, Sarah began preparing for humanity's first interstellar war. She had no idea that by responding to this call, humanity was about to change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. 6 weeks after sending their desperate message, the Zilari received an answer that changed everything. Dizes was in the emergency command, centered deep under Zilara Prime when the alarms started ringing. The city above was being evacuated. Kralik ships had been spotted just outside their solar system. Everyone knew they had maybe hours before the attack began. Senior Coordinator Vec called out from his station. Large energy signatures detected at the edge of our system. Multiple contacts jumping out of hyperspace. Dizes felt her heart sink. The Kraliks? Unknown. The signatures are different. These ships are not in our database. Vec's voice was confused. Wait, we're receiving a transmission. The main screen flickered to life. A face appeared that made every Zilari in the room step backward in shock. The creature was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its skin was tan-colored and smooth. Its hair was dark and short. But what scared them most were its eyes, small, forward-facing, like the eyes of a predator. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earthship Terra's Wrath," the creature said. "We received your distress call and have come to assist. Please respond on this frequency." Dizes stared at the screen. This thing called itself Admiral, which sounded like a military title. And it had come from somewhere called Earth. "This is Senior Coordinator Dizes," she managed to say. "Are you the ones who sent the message saying help was coming?" The human nodded. "That's correct. We have brought a fleet of 800 ships to help defend your people. Can you give us tactical information about the enemy force?" 800 ships. Dizes could hardly believe it. The Zilari had never seen a fleet that large in their entire history. "You came all this way to help us, but we don't even know each other." The human's face changed slightly. Dizes would learn later that this was called a smile. Where we come from, good people help each other. That's what makes us good people. Before Dizes could respond, more alarms started ringing. "Senior Coordinator," another operator called out. "Kralik ships are jumping into our system. 200 vessels, including their command dreadnought." On another screen, the Kralik ships appeared. They were dark and angular, built for destruction. At the front of the fleet was the massive command ship of War Chief Vorth. Vorth was typical of his species, tall, heavily muscled, covered in thick gray skin like natural armor. His head was large, and his teeth were sharp. The Kraliks had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived, and it showed in every line of his body. "Unknown vessels," Vorth's voice boomed across all frequencies. "You are interfering in Kralik's territory. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed with the Crystal Singers." Admiral Chun's response was calm and cold. "This is Admiral Chun. These people asked for help, and we're giving it. You need to leave this system immediately, or we'll make you leave." Vorth laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Foolish aliens, you have no idea what you face. I am War Chief Vorth of the Krolix Empire. We have conquered 50 worlds. Your small fleet cannot stand against Krolix might." "Actually," Chun said, "it's not that small. And you might want to check something before you start shooting." Vorth frowned. What could these strange aliens know that he did not? He ordered his science officer to scan the enemy ships and identify their origin. What the science officer found made his blood run cold. "War Chief," the officer said, his voice shaking, "the computer has identified the origin of these ships. They come from a planet called Earth in the Sol system." "So?" Vorth growled. "Sir, that planet is classified as a Class 12 death world." Vorth stood up so fast his chair fell over. Every Krolix on the bridge turned to stare. A Class 12 death world was theoretical. It was the highest danger rating possible for a planet. Most scientists believed nothing could evolve on such a world and survive. "That's impossible," Vorth said. "Recheck the data." "I've checked 3 times, sir. The planet has extreme weather, dangerous predators, high radiation, unstable geology, and gravity 50% higher than Krolix normal. The computer estimates that any species evolving on such a world would be extremely dangerous." Vorth looked at the human ships on his screen. They looked ordinary enough, but appearances could be deceiving. Still, he was War Chief of the Krolix Empire. He had never lost a battle. He would not be scared off by computer warnings. "Deathworld or not, they're still just another species," he declared. "All ships, attack formation. We'll show these dangerous creatures what real warriors look like." The Krolix fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 200 warships, each one tested in dozens of battles. Vorth had used this same fleet to crush the Bendari Defense Force just last year. Admiral Chun watched them come. Around her, the bridge crew of Tara's Wrath prepared for battle. These people had been born on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had evolved from creatures that hunted giant predators with nothing but sharp sticks. They had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, and 2,000 years of warfare among themselves. "All ships," Chun said quietly, "weapons free. Show them why you don't attack defenseless people." The human fleet moved forward to meet the Krolix. 800 ships against 200. But numbers were not the only advantage the humans had. Vorth's first hint that something was wrong came when his weapons hit the lead human ships. The energy beams that had cut through Zalari vessels, like tissue paper, barely scratched the human hulls. "What are those ships made of?" he demanded. "Unknown material, sir. Density suggests it's designed to withstand extreme conditions." The human return fire was devastating. Tara's Wrath fired a single salvo that punched through the shields and armor of a Krolix heavy cruiser like it was paper. The ship exploded in a ball of flame. Dizes watched the battle from her command center in amazement. The humans moved like nothing she had ever seen. Their ships were fast and deadly, striking with precision and power. In 10 minutes, they had destroyed more Krolix ships than the Zalari had ever dreamed possible. Vorth realized with growing horror that he had made a terrible mistake. These were not just another weak species. These were predators from a world that had forged them into living weapons. "All ships withdraw," he ordered. But it was too late. The human fleet had surrounded them. Fighters launched from carriers, moving in perfect formation. Marines in boarding pods attached to Krolix ships, cutting their way inside with tools that burned through whole metal like butter dot in 30 minutes. The battle was over. Half the Krolix fleet was destroyed, and the rest were fleeing as fast as they could jump to hyperspace. Vorth's ship was damaged but still running. As he prepared to retreat, he sent one last message to the humans. "This is not over, Deathworlders. The Kralix Empire will not forget this insult." Admiral Chun's response was simple. "Good. Maybe you'll think twice before attacking innocent people again." As the Kralix ships disappeared into hyperspace, Isis sent a message to the human fleet. "Admiral Chun, we cannot thank you enough. You saved our entire civilization." "Just doing what anyone should do," Chun replied. "But I think we need to talk. It looks like you've got a bigger problem than just one Kralix fleet, and we might be able to help with that too." Isis nodded, though she was not sure the human could see it. "Yes, Admiral. I think it's time we learn more about each other." As the immediate crisis passed, word of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Peaceful species that had lived in fear for centuries began to whisper a new word: hope. The humans had arrived, and everything was about to change. The liberation of Zelari Colony 5 began 3 days after the battle at Zelara. Prime. Major Jake Rodriguez stood in the assault shuttle as it raced toward the planet's surface. Around him, 40 Marines checked their weapons and equipment. These were veterans of the Titan Campaign and the Europa Rebellion, the best soldiers humanity had to offer. "Briefing time," Rodriguez announced. "The Kralix have been occupying this world for 2 months. Intelligence says they're using the civilian population as slave labor in mining operations. Our job is to get them out." Sergeant Kim looked up from her rifle. "What about enemy strength, Major?" 2,000 Kralix ground troops, maybe more. They've got heavy weapons and fortified positions. But remember what Admiral Chun told us. We're not just representing Earth today. We're showing the galaxy what humans do when innocent people need help." The shuttle shook as they hit atmosphere. Through the windows, the Marines could see the crystal cities of Colony 5. But where they should have sparkled in the sunlight, many were dark and broken. Rodriguez felt anger rising in his chest. This was what the Kralix did. They took beautiful things and destroyed them for no reason except cruelty. 2 minutes to landing zone, the pilot announced. The assault began with orbital bombardment from the human fleet above. But this was not random destruction like the Kralix used. Each shot was carefully aimed at military targets only. The humans had spent days mapping every Kralix position while avoiding areas where civilians might be hurt. War Chief Krath, commanding the ground forces on Colony 5, watched the human ships with confusion. "Why aren't they bombing the whole city?" he asked his second-in-command. "That's what we would do." Unknown War Chief. Perhaps they're stupid. Krath would soon learn that the humans were many things, but stupid was not one of them. The first wave of human Marines landed outside the main city. They moved differently than any soldiers Krath had seen before. They were careful and precise, working as perfect teams. Each Marine seemed to know exactly what his teammates were doing without talking. The first contact came when a Kralix patrol found Marine Corporal Davis setting up a sensor array. The Kralix soldier was typical of his species, 7 feet tall, massively muscled, armed with weapons designed to terrify enemies. He roared a battle cry and charged at the small human. Davis sidestepped the charge, grabbed the alien's weapon arm, and threw him over his hip in a move that would have been impossible for most species. The Kralix warrior, who outweighed Davis by 100 pounds, hit the ground hard and did not get up. "Contact," Davis reported calmly into his radio. "1 enemy down, moving to next position." Word of the incident spread through the Kralix forces like wildfire. How could such a small creature defeat a Kralix warrior so easily? The answer, though they did not know it, was simple. Davis had grown up on a world where gravity was 50% stronger than normal. His muscles and bones were dense and powerful beyond what most aliens could understand. Every human Marine was, by galactic standards, a superhuman. The real shock came when the humans reached the slave labor camps. Thousands of Zilari civilians were being forced to work in dangerous mines. They were thin and weak, their beautiful crystal-like skin dull from exhaustion and poor treatment. Many had died from the harsh conditions. Rodriguez saw a group of Zilari children, barely alive, being guarded by Kralik soldiers. The sight made his anger burn white-hot. "Sergeant Kim, take your squad and secure those kids. Non-lethal force only. We want prisoners for questioning." What happened next became legend among the Zilari people. Sergeant Kim and her Marines moved through the guard post like flowing water. The Kraliks had expected a frontal assault with lots of noise and destruction. Instead, the humans appeared silently behind them, around them, above them. In less than 2 minutes, 20 Kraliks guards were unconscious and tied up. But the most amazing thing was what came after. Rodriguez knelt beside a Zilari child who looked close to death. The little being was afraid and tried to crawl away from this strange alien. "It's okay," Rodriguez said softly. He took off his helmet so the child could see his face. "My name is Jake. I'm here to help you." He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. It was chocolate, one of humanity's greatest discoveries, mixed with nutrients and proteins. He broke off a small piece and offered it to the child. The Zilari child took the food and tasted it. His large eyes went wide with surprise. It was sweet and good, unlike anything the Kraliks had given them. "More?" The child whispered. Rodriguez smiled and gave him the rest of the bar. Then he picked up the child gently, carefully, and carried him toward the evacuation zone. Dizes watched this scene through a camera drone that had been following the human forces. She had been amazed by their fighting ability, but this was something else entirely. These deadly warriors were also capable of incredible gentleness. "I don't understand," she said to Admiral Chun, who was watching the same footage from orbit. "Your soldiers are the most effective fighters we've ever seen, but they're also kind." Chun nodded. "That's what makes us human, Coordinator. We fight to protect those who can't protect themselves. The ability to destroy and the choice to show mercy, both are necessary." The pattern repeated across the planet. Human forces struck with overwhelming precision against military targets while being incredibly careful around civilians. Kraliks' positions that had seemed unbreakable fell in hours to Marine squads that moved like shadows and hit like thunder, but the humans did something else that shocked both species. They took prisoners. The Kraliks' way of war was simple: kill everything that resisted, enslave everything that didn't. The Zilari had no way of war at all, but the humans had rules about how to fight. Even their enemies deserved certain rights. War Chief Krath found himself captured when his command bunker was overrun by Marines, who had somehow gotten inside without triggering a single alarm. He expected to be tortured or killed immediately. Instead, he was given medical treatment for his wounds, food, and water. When he demanded to know why, the Marine Guard explained through a translator. The Geneva Convention. Even enemies have rights. You'll be treated fairly and returned to your people when the war is over. Krath did not understand. In his world, enemies were destroyed, not protected. But as he watched human soldiers distributing food and medical supplies to Zilari civilians, he began to realize that these creatures operated by rules he had never imagined. The liberation of Colony 5 took only 4 days. The humans systematically destroyed every Kraliks position while evacuating all civilian populations to safety. Not a single Zilari civilian was hurt by human fire, though many had been saved from death at Kraliks' hands. Admiral Chun received reports from similar operations on 6 other worlds. The pattern was always the same: swift, Overwhelming human victory with careful protection of innocent life. But the real message was just beginning to spread across the galaxy on Krolyk's worlds. Terrified reports spoke of Deathworld warriors who could not be stopped. Species that had served the Krolyks out of fear began to whisper of rebellion. On peaceful worlds, the message was different but just as powerful. For the first time in generations, smaller species began to hope that the bullies and conquerors could be stopped. The humans had done more than just win battles. They had shown the galaxy a different way to fight, with honor, with purpose, and with mercy for those who deserved it. As the human fleet prepared to move to the next occupied world, Isis sent a message to every peaceful species in the galaxy. "The humans have come," she announced. "The age of helplessness is over." She was right. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. 6 months after first hearing the Zalari distress call, Admiral Sarah Chun stood before representatives of 47 different species. The Great Crystal Amphitheater on Zalara Prime had been rebuilt bigger than before, designed to hold delegates from across the galaxy. It was the first meeting of what would become known as the Galactic Defensive Alliance. Chun looked out at the assembled beings. Some were familiar now. The tall, graceful Zalari with their glowing skin. Others were completely new to human eyes. There were the floating ethereals from the Vega system, the plant-like Vadani, who communicated through chemical sense, and the small but brilliant Tinkers whose technology surpassed even humanity's in some areas. All of them had one thing in common. They were peaceful species who had lived in fear until humanity arrived. "Friends and allies," Chun began, her words being translated into dozens of languages by advanced computers. "We gather today because of a simple truth. Good people should not have to live in fear of evil ones." In the audience, Isis listened with wonder. 6 months ago, her people had been facing extinction. Now, they were part of something that had never existed before in galactic history, an alliance of peaceful species, protected by warriors with honor. The numbers told the story of humanity's impact. The Krolyk's empire, which had once controlled over 200 worlds, now held fewer than 50. Most of their fleet had been destroyed or surrendered. War Chief Vorth himself was in custody, awaiting trial for war crimes. But the Krolyks were not the only predators who had learned to fear human intervention. Devour Collective had been planning to attack the Tinker homeworld for its rich mineral deposits. When human ships appeared in their system, the Devourers had quietly withdrawn their fleet. The message was clear. Attacking peaceful species would bring consequences they were not prepared to face. The Shadowclaw Raiders had given up piracy altogether after 3 of their fleets were destroyed by human patrols. Some had even asked to join the alliance as reformed members. "The old way was simple," Chun continued. "The strong took from the weak, and the weak had no choice but to suffer. We're here today to announce that those days are over." She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems glowed in different colors. Green systems are alliance members under our protection. Yellow systems are neutral but safe from aggression. Red systems are those controlled by species that still choose conquest over cooperation. The display showed that green and yellow systems now vastly outnumbered red ones. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful civilizations were the dominant force. Delegate Korvash of the Ethereals floated forward. His species communicated through patterns of light, which the computers translated into words. Admiral Chun, the Ethereals have debated this alliance extensively. Our concern is simple. What happens when humanity decides it no longer wishes to protect us? What stops you from becoming conquerors yourselves? It was a fair question, and Chun had expected it. Several species had asked the same thing. The answer came from humanity's own history. Delegate Korvash, humans have a saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know this because we've seen it happen in our own past. That's why we've built safeguards into this alliance. The holographic display changed to show the alliance structure. At the center was the Defensive Council, with representatives from every member species. Humans held only one seat out of 47. Military decisions require approval from the Council, Chun explained. Humans provide the ships and soldiers, but we cannot act without permission from the species we've sworn to protect. If you tell us to leave, we leave. If you tell us not to fight, we don't fight. Dysis stood up to address the assembly. The humans have already proven their honor. When the Kraliks were defeated, my people offered to give Earth our most precious treasures as payment for their help. Admiral Chun refused. She said that good people help each other, and no payment is required. Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. This was unprecedented. A species with overwhelming military power refusing tribute from those it protected. Chun smiled. Coordinator Dysis is correct. We're not here to rule anyone or take anything from anyone. We're here because this is what we believe in, that everyone has the right to live in peace, to raise their children safely, and to build beautiful things without fear of someone taking them away. The delegate from the Verdani released a complex scent pattern. The translator converted it to words. The humans puzzle us. They come from a world of violence, yet they fight only to create peace. How is this possible? Because, Chen replied, our violent world taught us the value of peace. We know what it costs. We know how precious it is. And we know that peace is only possible when good people are willing to stand up to bullies. Over the next several hours, the delegates formalized what would become the most important treaty in galactic history. The Defensive Alliance Charter established principles that had never existed before. No species could attack another without facing intervention. From the Alliance military, peaceful species had the right to develop their own cultures without interference. Any species could join the Alliance by renouncing conquest and accepting peaceful conflict. Resolution. Trade disputes would be settled by negotiation, not warfare. Most importantly, the Charter established the Human Defense Corps, a permanent military force dedicated to protecting Alliance members. But the Corps could only act when authorized by the Council, and humans were forbidden from taking any action that would benefit Earth at the expense of Alliance members. As the conference ended, representatives began signing the Charter. Each signature meant another species choosing cooperation over conquest, peace over predation. Chun watched as Dysis added the flowing symbols of the Zalari language to the document. The same being who had sent out a desperate cry for help 6 months ago was now helping to create a new kind of galactic civilization. But perhaps the most significant moment came when a familiar face appeared on the communication screen. It was War Chief Krath, the former Kraliks commander who had been captured on Colony 5. He had been in human custody for months, and something had changed in him. Admiral Chun, he said, I request permission to address the Alliance. Chun nodded. Go ahead. Krath looked directly at the assembled delegates. I have spent months among humans as their prisoner. I expected torture, degradation, and death. Instead, I was treated with kindness and shown respect I had never earned. I have learned about this thing humans call honor. My people have forgotten what it means. He paused, struggling with words in a language that had no concepts for what he was trying to say. The Kraliks Empire officially surrenders to the Alliance. We request permission to join, if you will have us. We wish to learn how to be honorable like humans. We wish to protect instead of destroy. The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then Dysis stood up. Coordinator Dysis recognizes that redemption is possible for all beings. she said. The Zalari vote to accept the Krallick's petition for membership, subject to a probationary period and full reparations for their crimes. One by one, other delegates added their approval. In the end, even humanity's former enemies could find a place in the new galaxy, if they were willing to change. As the meeting ended, Chun walked to the window of the great amphitheater. Zalara Prime stretched out below her, its crystal spires once again gleaming in the light of twin suns. Children played in gardens where only months ago slaves had suffered under Krallick's whips. Thizes approached and stood beside her. "Admiral, do you really believe this will last? This peace we've built?" Chun considered the question. "I don't know, Coordinator. But I know this. As long as good people are willing to stand up for what's right, bullies will think twice before attacking the innocent. And as long as humans exist, we'll be standing up." In the years that followed, the Alliance grew to include over 300 species. Trade flourished between worlds that had once lived in isolation. Art, science, and culture spread across the galaxy as never before. There were still conflicts. There always would be. But now, they were settled by negotiation and compromise, backed by the certainty that anyone who chose violence over peace would face the Human Defense Corps. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars. They were not explorers or conquerors or merchants. They were guardians. They were the ones who stood between the innocent and those who would harm them. The galaxy had called out for help, not knowing what would answer. What answered was humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the end, the Zalari's mistake in contacting Deathworlders had been the greatest fortune in galactic history. The species that had evolved on the most dangerous world known to science had become the protectors of all those who chose peace. The age of fear was over. The age of the Guardian had begun. And across countless worlds, children of 100 different species could play safely under alien suns, knowing that somewhere among the stars, humans stood watch over their dreams.